And we're back with Mark Angelides, regular host of this show and editor-in-chief of Liberty Nation News. I'm your host, Michelle White. I want to talk about the EU tariffs that President
Sure.
Trump announced on Friday, which apparently was a holiday in the UK. Is that right?
Yes. Well, as is the Monday. It's called a bank holiday, federal holiday. Um,
Okay.
yes, for May Day. But yeah, so the tariffs that President Trump announced, 25% on autos coming into America, and so that there's a couple of funny things with that. Is the Euro project, the EU project, it's a protectionist racket, and I think people really need to understand that it is a protectionist racket. Whereas if you have influence, if you have lobbyists, your industry gets protected. If you
Mm,
don't have influence, cash, lobbyists, your industry doesn't get protected.
mm.
Um, it's almost mafioistic,
Mafioso. There you go.
mafiistic. I'm looking for an adjective here.
I don't think there is
Um,
one, but we'll use that.
okay. Uh, so in terms of the tariffs being put on, sure. Well, Europe's biggest market for autos is Europe, of course, and I think in terms of what President Trump is doing domestically to try and revitalize the auto industry. And I think he's doing a great job with that, by the way, just
Mhm,
in general, you know.
mhm.
And part of that is, you know, tariffs, because if you got to pay tariffs on importing your allegedly American built cars, you know, your American cars back into America, I mean, it's causing fiscal issues. So he's protecting American business, as is what he should do.
Right.
Now, in terms of what that does to the European markets, well, sorry, I say European, I mean the EU markets is
Mhm.
more rightly what it is. In
Right.
terms of the EU markets, having, you know, a 25% tariff on, well, tough. They should have organized this 5 months ago when they had the
Right.
opportunity, and they slow walked it, hoping that it would all
Right.
get shut down.
Right.
And they didn't. You know, they didn't get it done. They slow walked it, which is actually one of the problems with the
EU.
EU in general. It's
Right.
just so um,
Or any
Franz
big
Kafka
bureaucracy.
would be amazed with the writing material he has available today.
So that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you too, because the American media is not having as much of a fit over this as the British media. The Guardian article is all doom and gloom
Mm,
and cited the international trade chair of a committee chair as a German MEP who is saying that can America be or can the US be trusted? And as you just noted, and we
mm.
all know, they've been kicking the can down the road since July of last year. And so Trump is right to say you're not living up to your end of the bargain, but they don't admit that in the article for several paragraphs down. What do
Yeah,
you
of course not. I
think?
mean, very few people read the Guardian anymore, and those that do
That's
barely
true.
make it past the first couple of paragraphs.
So that's
Or
why they
the
bury it.
granuid, as we call it here, just because it's editorial used to be so poor quality. The spellings and just awful.
Really?
It's not much better now, to be fair. But yeah, the idea of saying that Trump's not a reliable partner. Well, you have to have a deal
Right.
to say what works as a partnership, right? There has to be a delineated, specific
Right.
deal, and it has to be agreed to by both sides.
Right.
And if you've been slow walking it, waiting for circumstance to change, on the off chance that maybe you'll get a better deal down the road, well, then that's your
Breaking the
lookout.
deal. Yeah, that's right. He's a
Well, there isn't
businessman.
a deal. That's the point, right? So
Right. There
how can
isn't
you
a
say,
deal.
oh, he's not a good person to do a deal with? You haven't done a deal, you
Right.
know? And it's your
Right.
fault you haven't done a deal. It was offered, it was
Right.
there, and they didn't take it. And so the
Right.
the uh
So it's
the
deflecting
EU
on his
car
part.
yeah, the EU car manufacturers, they should be having words with the EU rather than with President Trump.
Mark, I also wanted to ask you about President Trump removing 5,000 troops
Hmm.
out of Germany,
Yeah,
potentially more, and also threatening to take them out of Spain and Italy.
sure.
We know that you're not Europe, but that is your backyard.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Um, I think, well, you know, I used to work yeah, I used to be with the British Army working around the different camps in Germany, and I don't really see. why Donald Trump shouldn't pull troops out. I mean, sure, there's basis for operations and that benefits the United States, but does it need to be 35,000 or 30,000 troops in Germany?
Hmm.
I don't think it's not as though they can't get people to Germany. America can't get people to Germany if needs be.
Right.
Um, but yeah, the idea that if essentially Europe's defense is all taken care of by America, that those days are long gone, and they should be. Europe should be able to defend itself. Every country should be able to defend itself. Otherwise, it's not really a real country. It is the
Right.
reality. You exist. If you exist by the good graces of other people, then your country is not a country.
Right.
Um, and so each country should be doing its best and they can do this together. I mean, they're in the people in the EU, and for years, Britain was told there's no such thing as an EU army. There's an EU army,
Hmm.
right? But what it is, it's just different pools from different countries coming together to work under the banner of the EU. If they want to do it that way, that's fine. But each country needs to be responsible for its
That's
own
right.
safety and security. So even if there is a continued drawdown of troops, it's not going to be down to zero. And yet, at the end of the day, NATO, individual countries, the EU as a whole, they need to start taking a little more care, attention, and maybe putting a little more cash into their own defense.
Mark Angelides, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on.